unless I missed something, nobody did the knots. So I decided to go do it myself. And to show you how the knots is really not that complicated. And let's see if I have it on my web page here. And we'll walk through the code so you get a good understanding of it. So let's go to my page, people.mesa.edu, AT Manning, blockchain. There I have a blockchain. I add an amount to it, 1, 2, 3. I click add, and my blockchain is listed. And I have a nonce of 82. Notice my hash. Each time my hash has 3 leading zeros in front of the hash. Let's add something else to my amount to add to the blockchain. It gets also a hash of 3 leading zeros, but the nonce is 5149. What's going on? You see what's happening? Doesn't matter, and I can add the same amount each time. I will get a different nonce. What is going on? But notice my hash. My hash always has 3 leading zeros. Well, here's the short explanation. When I calculate the hash, in order to prove the work involved, proof of work, I specify that I must have a hash that has at least 3 leading zeros. Another way to say it is that my hash is less than 000FFFF. So it's a smaller number, or you have 3 leading zeros in the hash. How do I do that? Well, normally without the nonce, I would be hashing my date and my data and the previous hash and get a new hash. And if I hashed it again, nothing changed. I'd get the same hash over and over and over again. In order to get a hash with 3 leading zeros, I increment the nonce and then rehash everything, including the nonce, until my hash has the characteristic that I'm looking for of 3 leading zeros. I was surprised that I only had to do 80, have the nonce change to 82, and then the hash would come out to have 3 leading zeros. That's all the nonce is doing. It is simply a number used once. That's where you get nonce from. A number used once. Well, I'm not sure why they call it numbers used once. I'm just looking for a number that once I give it the right value, my hash of everything, timestamp, data, the nonce, and the previous hash will give me a hash with 3 leading zeros. That's what I'm doing. Now let's see what the code looks like. Notice here the most number of times that I had to rehash and increment as I incremented my nonce to get 3 leading zeros was 90,762 times. And that was with a value of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's see if I do it again with another value added to my blockchain, JSmart's blockchain. Let's see. Oh, look at that. That nonce didn't take as long. Because remember, the nonce is a number that I change until my hash has that level of complexity or difficulty. That's all the nonce is in blockchain. Now, if you looked up nonce and looked for the general definition of nonce, it kind of was confusing. But all I cared about was the use of nonce in blockchain. Nonces are used other places, and here we go to Investopedia. And some of you actually did do a little research and mentioned what the nonce was. You explained what it was, but you didn't actually implement it in your code. So let's go see what the code looks like. Actually, you are welcome to actually view the code. I'm just going to use my code inspector, and let's walk through this code. I want to make sure you have a good understanding of it. And of course, I'm so proud of my coding skills as well. Let's see. Let's take a look at the source. And let's see. Let's look at the source code for the page. In the page, I have my page. Here's my title, and I simply show in a little table an amount and an input in the next element. So look at the page. That's this little guy here. That's a table element with an amount, and then a text input element. Let's see, can I shrink that away? I don't want to see that part. I guess I can't hide that. And it's simply a text input. When I click that button on click add block, let's take a look at what add block does. Down here in my code, add block finds that value that I had entered, get element by ID text amount, gets the value by reading the elements.value, and it calls my blockchain add block. Oh, and I forgot, when I start my page, I assign my coin to be a new blockchain. Ooh, this number 3, that indicates level 3 difficulty. That's what the 3 is, and we'll take a look at the code there. So I add a block to my coin of this data. Now, remember in the memo portion when you made blockchain, I asked you to add a memo element? You could decide, if you're going to add a memo element, you could just say, I'm going to make it part of the data that gets added. You could have amount colon value, comma, memo colon some string. If you wanted to have a memo, and I would have then a different input element with the value of the memo. So I'm not implementing memo in the data. We'll see if I implemented memo as a property of a block. Well, here, do you see me using memo here? Unless there is no memo. Either I'm giving the same memo every time, or I'm not using memo. I don't think I'm using memo because I was focusing on getting the nonce to work. A little bit debugging. I list the data to the console every time I add a block, just for debugging. And remember, when you're debugging, you are allowed to leave console logs in there. In official release to your customer, they're probably not going to be happy seeing a lot of console.logs, and you may accidentally be giving away security information in your console.logs. But in testing code and in the lab, it's fine to go crazy doing console.logs everywhere, if it will help you debug. I find that setting breakpoints is much more helpful debugging, and I actually had a problem with this code. Now, you are welcome to look at this code. Remember, you can always look at my code by going to the people@emmaus.edu, cs460, AT Manning, HW blockchain. You can actually view that code right now if you like. Okay, so this, click on the button, it reads what value I had entered right there into that text box, and it calls my coin add block. And remember what this is. Abby, can you tell me what this is? Amount colon val. How would you describe what that is to someone learning coding? What am I doing there?
You're pulling that information from the code above, like from the input.
Okay, so the val is what came from the text box. Yep, so the variable val has the value entered in the text box. But what is this thing about the curly braces? What's going on with the curly braces in amount colon val? How would you describe what that is?
Isn't that like just ensure that it adds the whole thing into a function?
Yeah, you're getting warm. What is the thing in curly brace? If you see that thing in curly braces, amount colon val, curly braces around it, what does that say to you? What am I looking at? When I see curly brace, amount colon val, which is this variable's value right there. Harley, want to give a stab at it? What is that telling, or what is that describing? What am I highlighting? Something between curly braces, amount colon val. I'm looking for a particular word somewhere. Has to do with data. John, did you have something? You were looked like you were making a signal of some sort.
It almost seems like it was adding a property. I'm not sure.
You're close. You're close. Samuel,
I think Eli knows this one.
you're not. You don't know this one.
I'm not sure what's going on here.
What
Because I
is?
don't know what amount is.
Right. We don't know what amount is. Because amount isn't something. What is in curly braces? This is a kind of basic thing, and this is a great way to learn coding just by walking through someone else's code to understand what's going on here. That's why sometimes I have you write code, sometimes I have you take code and comment it up. What is amount : val? Anybody?
It's not a property, right?
No, it's being sent as a parameter to add block. Right? I have add block in parentheses. This is being sent as a parameter to the add block function of the mycoin.
It's not an object.
Yes, it's an object.
But you can't just you can make an object just in line.
Yeah, yeah.
Really?
Now, in React, curly braces start meaning something more, like I'm dropping into JavaScript. In raw JavaScript, which we have right now, curly brace, some name, colon, some value, I'm creating an object who has one property called amount, whose initial value is the value of the variable val. So if I put in comments here, I'd say send the object containing the property value. So I call it a simple object or an hard-coded object, I suppose. But inline, I'm saying create an object who has a property called amount with a value val. That is being sent as a parameter to the add block function. So that's a fundamental understanding of this code is I'm creating an object and I'm sending it as parameter. Now let's see the use of that object down there now in add block. Now one way to do this, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn on a breakpoint by clicking here in my inspector, and now I'm going to add another value here. I'm just going to click the add button now, and look at there, it stops at that breakpoint. I can view add block and see what it is. I get all sorts of things here. Don't worry about understanding everything as you hover over the variable. But now what I want to do is I want to I can step over it, and that would take me to the line 40, or I can step into that function. It'll take me to the code that's being called. That's what this debugging is great to do. I can now click on this little arrow, step into the function, and guess where it takes me? It takes me to the add block. And now look at this. The new block data is the object whose property is amount and whose value is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because that was what I had entered in that text box. Now we're going to start exploring where this nonce is being used. I'm saying let's create a new block. I'm calculating the date as a parameter. The new block data, that's going to be the data put in this new piece of block. I'm going to get the hash of the last block. That's needed whenever I create a new block. And I have a fourth parameter called difficulty. It's just going to be a number, and you see here that that's the number 3. Remember back in the call to that, I had a number 3 in the parameter of when I created the blockchain. This dot difficulty, where does it get that number? What is this? Remember back in the call, I did my coin or my blockchain dot add block. So this, remember, this is the blockchain that I've created. It's the object that has the function create Genesis block, and when I create the blockchain, it takes a parameter of difficulty. When I created the blockchain, I gave a number 3 to it. Remember that back in my code? That's how my blockchain got created. It basically set the property of the blockchain whenever I refer to this difficulty, it's the difficulty that I set when I created the blockchain. And we'll skip over the create genesis block. That was the function that gave me the most trouble. What happened is, unless I have a starting hash that's not blank, I can't go high. I can never find a hash that will satisfy the difficulty. So I got myself stuck in an infinite loop till I realized when I create the genesis block, I need to give it a hash of something, or I never get my genesis block. Because when I create a new block, let's see what happens here. I'm creating a new block. Now let's go down to see this creation of a new block. Actually, I don't think well, let's just go skip through that. I'm going to click the step into, and now I'm returning the latest block. And now I'm done. And now I'm back to here, and now let's go to the next step. Here is the constructor of a new block. And now we see our first view of the nonce. The nonce is initially set to 0. Notice how and this is all you needed to do to implement the nonce. All you needed to do was say, when in the constructor, I have a nonce. This.nonce equals 0 is all the code that you needed to do. You didn't actually have to do the mining part unless you wanted to. Yes, John?
I think I submitted mine right after you graded it as 0. Like the same night. I think it was like 20, 30 minutes later. So I think mine might be implemented.
Yeah, I don't think I had it yet. Okay, good. I'll take a look at that.
Thank you.
So when I said in the instructions, implement the nonce, implementation just meant have the nonce as part of somewhere in the constructor of your block. If you then actually did the calculate hash that did the mining, which I'm going to show you here, that would have been even better. But to use the nonce, remember the point of a nonce in blockchain is simply a value we throw in there that we change as we mine, and we keep hashing until our hash has a certain level of difficulty. And in the real mining out there, I think the difficulty is set to be like 1,000 or something, some ridiculously high numbers that they have to hash over and over, changing the nonce until they get a nonce that matches a hash of a very specific format. And they make it so hard that only high quality A6 CPUs specialized for mining can actually do it. And it's ridiculous how much energy they're spending on Bitcoin. I'm not even sure the value of Bitcoin anymore after finding out how much energy is being used just to mine Bitcoin. Do a little research on that. It's ridiculous. And of course, graphical hardware was getting expensive because people use them to do mining, and mining got less and less profitable, and so I think a lot of people just wasted their GPUs. They're probably sitting in somebody's factory now, or somebody's closet gathering dust, because the professionals now, companies that do mining professionally and multiple huge mining server farms are the only ones making money at it, and using gobs and gobs of energy. Anyway, this is all the code you had to do to implement the nonce. You simply have it as part of your code. Let's see now how that's used then when I actually do the mining. Any questions?
Is nonce a number you're trying to change to guess a hash?
Yes, yeah. I'm just changing the number and rehashing until my hash comes out with the way I want it to. That's all I'm doing.
Oh.
And that's what all mining is.
Wait, so the nonce, as it changes, you say, okay, use this nonce that we have to make a hash.
And hash, and see, does the hash match some difficulty? Does it have 3 zeros at the end, at the front yet? If not, increment the nonce and hash it again until I get. And because hashing is a fairly complex operation, they say, okay, we're going to have this whole proof of work, so someone can't rebuild the blockchain and fake the world out that they're the ones with the $1 trillion and no one else. That's the whole part of blockchain. technologies. Someone can't hack the chain. One, because it's hard to remine everything, all the transactions, and two, the blockchain is shared among multiple nodes. The whole blockchain technology, it's kind of fascinating in itself. Anyway, let's see now how we use that nonce. So let's walk through the code, step, 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 step. Now I'm going to calculate the hash. Now that I have constructed my block, giving it a timestamp that was handed as a parameter, the date that I hashed it, or that I asked for the new block, the data that I sent, which is simply that object containing just the value. The nonce starts out at 0. I store the previous hash. Now let's jump into the calculate hash by clicking the down arrow. I'm not going to jump over this. I want to go see what that code does. Click on that. Now I see, okay, I'm going to start with my nonce being 0. And look at, somebody actually commented some code, what's going on here. Hopefully that's helping you. The next step, I am setting a temporary variable just so I can see that temp is getting a proper value. And I had to do all this because I was stuck in my infinite loop and didn't know what was going on. So I threw in some debugging code in here just to see what in the world is happening. And I realized that my temp hash was not changing enough. This little loop here was just going around forever. So, temp hash, I'm giving it a hash. Notice what I'm hashing. The concatenation of the previous hash, the timestamp, the nonce, and the stringified data. Remember, that's the data that was sent to me as a parameter. Stringifying it basically just means make a string showing that and turn it to a string concatenated with what's already built up, and then calculate the hash of it. All right. Now comes the mining loop. This is all mining is doing, or the primary thing. I'm sure there's more complexities in the real blockchain out there, but this is essentially what mining is doing. One by one. Well, first of all, I calculate a variable called prefix, and I'll show you what's going on here. I built a function called give me a string with that many zeros in it. Maybe I'll have you build that as a little exercise. I simply calculate the hash of that. And then here we go. Now s prefix is, look at that. That function there gave me 3 zeros. So I build a string of 3 zeros. And here is a piece of code that I'm hoping you can tell me what's happening here. Let's start back with Abby. Can you tell, if I hover over this, what is this code here doing? What is substring 0 : difficulty of my temp hash value doing for me? Remember, temp hash is this long string, 256 hash of something. What is this line saying?
So it's saying while the s prefix, which is the leading zeros, is not equal to the temp hash at position 0.
Close, close. Difficulty has a value of 3. What does substring 0, 3 give me? Yeah, the first 3 characters. Yeah, substring is a very, very useful function when you're dealing with strings. And maybe I'll have some exercises with this just for practice. When you're dealing with strings, substring gets you a piece of that string. Like if I want the first character, I could do substring 0, 1. That gives me the first character of a string. So very, very useful, but basically saying, does the prefix match the first 3 digits of my hash, which is temp hash? And I see temp hash right now has 17E, so it's not going to be true. So if I click the step, it'll jump right, it'll increment the nonce, rehash everything, and then go back to the top of the loop. Yes, John?
Is substring inclusive or exclusive? Like, does it give you the 4 positions of 0, 2, 3, or does it give you 0, 1, and 2, and then stop before 3?
It is left side inclusive, right side exclusive. Less than or equal to the one on the right side. So 0, 1 gives me the first character at position 0. 0, 2 gives me 0 and the next one. So the index stops before it gets to 2. Now I saw in a previous it was on the midterm, Many of you that were doing that little string exercise, for some reason, and it worked, the code worked, you turned your string into an array, and then you treated it as an array, which is okay, but it was not the code that I was thinking of, but since it solved the problem, you got credit for it. So see what's going on here? I keep going through that loop. Now I'm at nonce value 1. The prefix, the temp hash, doesn't meet the requirements yet. Let's put a breakpoint here at 106 by clicking there, and now let's just continue until we hit that breakpoint. And let's see, my temp hash, notice my temp hash now has 3 zeros in it. And what was my nonce? My nonce had to make it to a value of 1,201. So basically I went through this loop 1,200 times, and then that 1,200 first time with the nonce of that value hashed together with the previous hash, the timestamp, and the stringified data, I finally got a hash that met the criteria of difficulty of 3.
Do the computers that are mining have special software that tells them, hey, don't freak out, this loop is going to take days or months to finish?
There's got to be, something like that. But it's, remember, the way they do mining is, if you're a miner, you're competing with all the other miners in the world. The blockchain says, I need a hash for this. I need a valid nonce for this hash. Here's the data. Who can get me the nonce value that will hash together for then putting in the official blockchain? All your miners blast away competing. The first one to find the hash wins, gets paid a tiny fraction of Bitcoin, and then the blockchain is assigned. I don't know how all the communication works. Like tells everyone, hey, we're done. You can give up trying. Someone found it. And I don't know how many miners there are out there.
If loses equals true, break.
Yeah. So at some point they mine and are listening for probably a message from the master blockchain controller, in which I'm assuming there's multiple running in parallel, just using up gobs of energy in this world to find that hash. Abby, do you have a question?
Oh, no.
Okay. So I'm hoping that this code is understandable. I simply loop through this until my hash matches the difficulty. And remember, the difficulty determines how many leading zeros I am looking for in the hash. And so I just keep hashing away crazy like, hoping that there actually is a solution. And I don't know, I'm assuming that they may have run across problems like I did initially. If I don't have an initial hash, or my initial hash is like nothing, I got stuck in an infinite loop. I never came up with a hash that had the difficulty. And I can't quite explain why, except I guess the string didn't change enough by just incrementing the nonce. My hash wasn't varying enough because the initial previous hash had nothing in it. So all I was doing was hashing a time and the nonce and the data. Without a previous hash, the nonce wasn't making my hash change. And when you get another infinite loop here in the debugger, it's a really problem because it never comes out of the debugger and you're stuck. You can't, at least I didn't know how. Maybe there's a way to actually break, stop the code, have it break out of its loop. I couldn't get it to break out of its loop, so all I had to do was, if I got caught in an infinite loop, close the page, reopen the page in another tab, and set a breakpoint until I finally figured out I was stuck in an infinite loop. So now let's just step out of this. Now that I've got my hash, now I can continue. It found a matching hash, and now it's done with the constructing of the new block because it did the calculate hash, and now I put the new block on the blockchain, and then I logged what was in the list, and I'll just go ahead and continue. And then my display here showed me filled a table with all the data. So I wrote a little routine that generates the data, goes through the data in my blockchain, and one by one creates a table of that. I call it a B chain table. And I guess I have a comment here. Return a table of blockchain items. That's what this is. So the main reason I wanted to go through this is to show you. You did a little research. Most of you did a little research. You looked up knots and gave me a excerpt from a page like this. But what you did not do, unless I checked one more, is actually implement the knots by basically putting it in somewhere in your code in the definition of your block right here, and creating of the block object. You include a nonce. That's adding that parameter or that property to your block. You could have put it here, or you could have just said when I create the block, it's part of my data. That would have made it a little weird, but you somewhere basically including the value of a nonce that could be changed as I then recalculate my hash. Now I've got a little exercise for you, just to test your coding skills, having to do with React, and then we'll talk through that React tutorial. Basically, this little test is going to demonstrate whether or not you understood. Well, first of all, did you work through the tutorial or get started on the tutorial? And then, if you did, do you understand it? So, if you go into the section called Assessments, I will now make public the React tutorial check-in, is what it's called, underneath quizzes. Over here, down in the assessment section, at the bottom of that, there's a React tutorial check-in. And I'm going to log in as JSmart and view it as JSmart. Let's see if he's still logged in. JSmart needs to get logged in. All right, JSmart. Come on, JSmart. Let's get you set up. Ooh, ugly page. I don't know why JSmart gets that page. JSmart's going to go down into that. Let's see if it's showing up right for you. Okay. Now, all you got to do when you submit your assignment, give me the proper code for this board. Given this, a new definition of the square function. Notice I am not using square down here. What do I need to do to actually make use in React of this function square that has a return of this? All you have to do is type in what the definition of the board function would be. Basically, write the new board function. What does it look like? From your knowledge so far of React.
Right, this is. So you also have the square function in there?
I have a square function in there.
Right?
What's that?
Oh, no.
So in your submission, type out what the new board function should look like. Based on what you see there. The code will work now, but it needs to use the square function. Do your best to figure out, remember how React works. When I define a function, what I can do with it in React. This is a test of your understanding of React. And I'll give you, how about 5 minutes enough? I'll give you 10 minutes if you need. Think about, what does React look like? Right now the board function is doing this. But I want to use square instead of how it is now. Right now, board is not referring to square anywhere, right? There's nothing using square down here. Use square. in the definition of the board.
Oh, I see.
I think once you see it, it shouldn't be too complicated. I'm going to do it over here in Notepad.
I've done this.
Basically, you want your code to give equivalent of what was being generated before, but using square instead. So in your submission, just go paste your answer in the create part right here. Just go ahead and paste your answer right there. What should the new board function look like? Right there. And while you're doing that, I'll check. Got one answer so far. Let's see how we did. Well, you didn't use it the way that code is given. Take another look, Eli. You gave me the final solution. I want you to give me the solution for this code. A square that is only defined like this. You gave me the code that had a different square in it. You have to use this square.
I don't know if that's you.
That only, basically I'm partway through the tutorial. You gave me the end of the tutorial code. I want the code that will work like this, that uses that square to generate an array of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You can't give me
an array. We're generating an array.
Well, that's essentially what the code is giving. But I want to see the code that gives me the equivalent of this, only using this square function. Don't give me the code that's the solution to your in the tutorial.
Okay.
You have to give me the code that works with this particular square function. So you can't go to your tutorial and give me the final code. I want to see.
I didn't. I was checking my answer
Oh,
afterwards. That's what I had written. I
Yeah.
was checking my answer.
all right. Well, I want to see only the square that works with this. Only using that particular definition of square. That will give me the equivalent. Let's see what Mr. Marchand gave me here.
Well, what's good for dinner right now?
Nope, nope, nope. Incorrect.
Would that not work though?
Nope. I'll give you another chance. And yeah, you're all giving me code from your completed tutorial. I need the code that goes with this.
I just copied that and did that.
Yeah, but you were closer, but you didn't do the right thing. Remember, square is doing this for me. You have to use this function square. Don't give me a square that is more complex, which was the tutorial gave you towards the end. They modified the square function to make the tutorial finally work. Yes, John?
Is mine not using that square function?
It's using it, but incorrectly. I guess I could try it. I don't. Well, I guess it wasn't the solution I was expecting. Maybe it works. Let me see if that actually works in React. I don't think it will, but it's a chance that it does. Let me see.
Because it's proper syntax.
No, it's not the syntax that you would normally do with React. But let's see if it actually does work, because it is calling the function. Let's see if it works. I might have to give. If it actually works, I might have to give you credit for it. But it doesn't. It's not the code that I wanted. Well, let's see if it actually works. Let's see if I can select and copy paste code. Let's see. It won't let me select. That's goofy Schoology thing. Won't let me select. I have to download the whole thing before it'll let me copy paste code. Oh, I can zoom out. Let me zoom out. Copy. All right, I'll do. You ready? I'll go over the solution. Now, this isn't a huge thing, but it's showing me a little bit that you're giving me the final solution to the tutorial, which is a good. I'm glad you worked through the tutorial, but it feels like you don't understand the code if you're not giving me the use of square properly in this particular code example. You're jumping ahead to the whole tic-tac-toe game. I want to see the solution to this particular problem only.
Is there something wrong with the board function, like where it's broken? Like an error inside of it?
Nope, nope.
Sid, could you take a look at this real quick?
I don't have it done either.
Yeah. I'm trying to figure out what I did wrong here.
Oh, giving it a bug?
Well, your code actually may work. I'm forking the tutorial to see if your code actually works there, John.
Oh no, I pasted everything. You should just paste everything that I gave.
And I'm taking now John's solution. Where did I find it now? All right, taking John's solution here. Let's see if I get this now. Copy. And I'll paste. No, yep, John, yours is broken. So I pasted it into, oh, wait a minute, maybe I didn't put square in there yet. Let me go back. Let me select and paste the definition of square in. And now, see if it's happy. Well, John, I guess you did. It did work for you. It wasn't the way I intended, but it does work.
Yay, I actually figured it out.
You actually did it different way than I would have, but it actually works. Okay, everyone got something submitted? Go ahead and fire up, submit your answer. Give me your final answer, and then I'll walk through what I intended to be the solution, but I can see some of you got creative, which is okay with me. All right, I got everything. Abby, go ahead and turn in something.
Okay.
And I will demonstrate for you the and basically I went through the tutorial and came to this section of the tutorial, and I thought, this is something I want to be sure you understand as you go through that tutorial. And they actually showed you the use of it. On the, I don't know what page in the tutorial I'm at, but I actually see the solution. They showed me the tutorial. All right, got it submitted? Okay. Basically, I'm taking you to the page in the tutorial, or first I'll show you my solution before I look at the tutorial. And to make sure you understand why I wanted this as the solution, this is what I was looking for. Given that square is defined as returning a button using the value of the parameter sent to me here, I want to replace this with what square gives me when I have a parameter of 1, parameter of 2, parameter of 3. Here is what I was hoping to get. I am including or using the squared tag, using value equals 1 to set that parameter value to a value of 1. Now, Mr. Marchant discovered that I can do curly braces square parenthesis 1 essentially gives me this too, and which I wasn't expecting until I went and tested it. But in the tutorial, and I'll show you the page in the tutorial, they give you this exact page as I was working through it. Now, where'd that page go? In working through the tic-tac-toe tutorial, now I lost it. Here. In the tutorial, they showed you this. That if I want a board with all the numbers, this is how I can define the function square and then use it in my board. The reason they did this is because this is how React likes to do things. And actually, I didn't quite do it the same. I did the slash square instead of the ending, so I could have done this instead of slash square. I could have just done that. So I didn't give you the right solution myself. They did that instead of adding the ending tag square. See how they did that? Square, value equals 1. Now, here was Mr. Marchant's solution. He did this, and it ended up working. I copied and pasted this code, square, parenthesis, 1, in curly braces.
Basically, what's that doing?
That's basically calling the function that returns the button of class of just like, and we see this, the square is defined here. If square returns this string, you're essentially saying, when I do this, give me a button. Now, it gave me the square, so I'm assuming it worked. Maybe it doesn't function quite the same way, but I'll call this the Marchant variation.
Think different back, you know?
Now, I'm not sure that it works, so I'm going to put a question mark. I think it works because it did give me a page of, it did give me this. Uh-oh, no it didn't, John. No, it's not the solution, because your solution, I just remember now, if I checked your solution, I thought it was giving me, but notice what your solution gave me. It gave me the square without the number in it. So it is not working. Right? See, it's blank squares. If I put slash square space value equals 1 ending bracket, then I get the value 1 in there. So, sorry John, it was close, but it did not work. It did give me a div of source, but it didn't put the number in there. So, sorry, the Marchant variation seems to fail. It did give me a grid, but it didn't give me the number and a button to click on.
What then would be the difference between them?
Well, apparently this is not setting the value to be taking a parameter. Maybe if I took the curly braces away there, would that do it? Let's see.
Would it be a dot value after the square
No,
parenthesis?
it doesn't like that. A React child does not work that way. So it may look like good JavaScript, and it didn't give me error messages. But then I realized, wait a minute, I'm not getting the number to show up. It gave me the grid without the number. So this is what has to be the solution. And can I zoom in on that for you? That is the correct solution for each of the squares. And as I fix my code, copy, paste, set the value 2, paste, set the value 3. This is the code. See how it's giving me the correct values. Now I will copy all those, replace those, and do 4, 5, 6.
Here's a thought for you, Mr. Manning.
Yes.
What if you add in the return for function square value equals quote value? That should make
the curly brace alternate work. Let's play with that a little bit. So let's just say we want to get it to work for this one. Let's try the curly brace square with a parameter of 1. It doesn't give me an error, but it gives me a blank square.
So then up in your function square, because you're passing a value, inside the button before class name, add value equals 1. Or no, value equals value. And pass it that
In
parameter.
curly braces? That's what you're asking?
Yep.
It doesn't complain, but it doesn't produce that value in the button. Now, one thing about W3 Schools and this, I don't think I have any hope of using the inspector to try to figure out what's going on with that, because you get, let's just try it. Control Shift I gives me all sorts of crazy stuff, and I don't know what this all means. So good luck trying to use the inspector on their page.
It's super helpful when they tell you errors about in the file
Yeah.
that you haven't created.
Yeah.
It's like, what? I don't know what that is.
Now, even though we're just touching on React, so I'm not expecting you to be React experts, but is that making sense? That React, the way to build React is to build tags with functions, and then to pass parameter in, if they're going to be used in this curly brace, the name of my parameter, I have to use value equals in the call to that parameter. Now, later on in the code that they gave you in the tutorial, they were using useState to get values of things, and they no longer needed that parameter later on. But in this particular code that you were given as basically halfway through, or even at the start of the tutorial, if this is the definition of your square function that returns, notice in React, I don't have to put parentheses around it if I'm just returning one line of code. I return a button whose class name is square, curly brace the value that you're sending me in the parameter in curly brace value. The proper way to use that is like so. I put in the tag square value equals in order to have that prop have a value at the point where the function square then is implemented. That will give me, so question mark here is, sorry, it didn't give me an error, but it didn't give me the number. So although the code sort of worked without errors, the number was not showing up. And it may be interesting, maybe you'd find some way to access the value and have it work both ways, but this is the way React is intended to work. When I define an element here in React, and I want to use a property as a parameter, I send that property value using that syntax, square value equals 1. Okay, now a little exercise in your JavaScript's coding skills. And here's a place where I'm going to go to practice a coding skill. I go to codingbat.com, and I'm looking at Java examples, but it's not because it has the word Java in it, but because it's a similar language. Let's look at, first of all, let's look at a string level 2 problem and see if you can solve it in JavaScript. And I'm going to choose one here. Let's try just random choice here. Yes, yes, sir.
I may have figured it out. If you take the value out of the curly braces when you return it for function square.
Here?
Yes.
Let's see if it breaks the other ones. It breaks the other ones though. It breaks the other version. Let's see if it works with your version. Bracket, square, parenthesis 1.
Because that should
Didn't work.
value from it.
Didn't work. Test your solution before giving it to me next time, Mr. Marchant. There, mess me up. I take that out. I put it back in. It works for the others. It feels like maybe you had something there, but didn't give me errors, but it didn't give me the number. So,
What's the website we're supposed to go to?
oh, codingbat.com.
Oh, they just have Java.
Right, they just have Java. Well, we're going to solve the same kind of problem, but use JavaScript instead. Write the function that will work. And let's try random let's try XYZ middle. See if we can solve this problem using JavaScript. And what are we looking for? We're looking to define a function that, given a string, is XYZ appear in the middle of the string. The number of characters to the left and the right of the XYZ must differ by at most 1. Ooh. Doesn't sound like too hard. Does XYZ appear in the middle of a string? And let's break this down into two pieces. I think this makes a decent type of a question on a final. Let's see if we can solve this one. I'm gonna copy this text, put it into a little JavaScript function, and then build a page around it to actually test the code. So I don't even have to build a page. I'm just gonna do console.log to see if it gives me the answer to those three problems. So I'm gonna copy that. And I'm just going to do it on my local machine. I'm going to go to Notepad++, and let's see if I can build the answer to that using JavaScript. So I'm going to build a page. Let's see, I'm going to use code because it'll give me a nice page around it. So I'm going to use VS Code. Where's my VS Code page? Here we go. I'm going to build a new file, have a new file. Let's see here, open our Explorer. Let's see, I'm a little tutorial. I'm going to start a new folder. Open folder, let's say, do I have a practice folder? I'll call it my exercise. I'm in here in my exercises folder. And I'm going to select that folder and see what do I have in there. I have a practice. Let me create a file called coding bat practice. Coding bat practice.html, and start HTML page, exclamation point, tab, and now down here in my body I'm just going to write my script, and in comments paste what I want to write. Yep. So I'm going to wrap this text so I can read the whole problem. And now, let's start writing a function called XYZ middle. Let's tab this in a little bit, make it a little nicer formatted. Tab, tab. Okay, function XYZ middle. XYZ middle. Takes up one parameter. I'm going to call it the parameter str. And I'm defining it. Now, does that look a lot like the coding bat start? Let's see here. They give you this, but in Java, you declare that it's public and it's returning a Boolean. I don't have to do this part in JavaScript. I'm just declaring my XYZ middle, and I don't have to declare what type of variable that is because JavaScript is loosely typed. All right, so let's make some notes about how I can figure out what's in the middle. Let's see here. In my comments here, let's see. The length of the string, length of str is str.length, right? Or is it str.length empty parentheses? Do a little look on JavaScript. String length. It is str.length. Now, halfway through that, let's just assume right now, let's just say we have an odd number of characters in the length. We'll see if that makes it true. How do I know what the middle is? The middle three characters. How do I find the middle three characters? If it's odd, it might be a different answer versus if it's even. Let's see, if I have an odd number of characters, the middle of my string, let's see, that has a length of 7. The middle character is going to be character number 4. So 7 divided by 2 plus 1 will give you the middle character. Let's find out. So odd, the middle char is str.length divided by 2 plus 1. Let's find out if that's really true. How do I test that? Well, let's just do this. Console.log length of stir is or equals actually middle of stir is middle. S, we'll call it S middle. Smiddle. And let's calculate smiddle. Let's do a let smiddle equal stir dot length divided by 2 plus 1. I think I have to do math.floor of the length divided by 2, right? Otherwise, because stir dot length divided by 2, if it's odd, it's going to give me a decimal number. Let's give me the floor of that and then add 1 to it. I think that gives me my middle character. Let's find out. And let's do console.log. Char is, and how do I get at that char? Stir.char at, oh, let's do this substring. Substring smiddle, comma, smiddle plus 1. Char at smiddle will work too. Save that, and let's load that and see what I get for console information. Oh, actually, I haven't called XYZ middle yet. Let's call XYZ middle of AA XYZ BB. Now I'll get a console log. Bring my browser over and open that up. Or I could run it. Let's see what happens if I do run. I think it'll bring up a browser for me. Run and debug in Chrome. Opened up a separate Chrome window over on my other screen. And I bring up the inspector and look at the console. Middle of XYZ BB, A is equal to 4. That is correct. Character is Z. Oh, character is Z. Uh-oh. I don't think I want to add 1 to it because 0, because 0 is the index. Let's see, if I want to get at the character, let's stop adding a 1 to it and I will get the middle character. So the middle, remember I'm putting a little comment here, 0 indexed, little comment, 0 indexed, exclamation point, reminding me of that. Now let's refresh my page. Yes, there it is. Middle character is Y. The middle, starting counting at 0, character is 3. Let's just make sure that let's see what how that comes out to be for even numbered letters. So let's do XYZ middle of the other example. What did they say? A XYZ BB. See what we get with that. Save that. Come here, refresh. Middle of AAXYZBB is 3. The char is Y. Middle of AXYZBB equals 3 of a 6 characters. Well, that character turns out to be Z. And all we want to do is return whether or not it's true that XYZ are the middle 3 characters. So now is where substring comes in handy. Can you figure out, so right now let's just assume we have an odd number of characters. If the character and the character Y, or character Y is the middle character of those 3, how do I know whether I have an XYZ in the middle? When it's odd, I am finding that the y is the actual true middle character. How do I know whether there's an x to the left of y and a z to the right of y?
Could you do like take with the substring?
Yes,
do
yep.
Middle -1.
Yeah.
Middle +1.
Exactly, yes. So I do. I'll call middle 3. Let s middle 3, smiddle 3 equal str, that's substring, smiddle -1, comma, smiddle +1. And let's see what we get. Let's do console.log smiddle 3, oh, in parentheses, smiddle 3 equals, and then concatenate on smiddle 3. Let's see what I get now. Refresh. Smiddle 3 is xy. Uh-oh. I guess since it does not include the second number, I need to do smiddle +2 there. And then, there we go, smiddle 3 is equal to xyz. So when I have an odd number of characters, I am right in the middle if I do that calculation of my center character. One to the left and one to the right included in the substring does the correct comparison, and I get smiddle 3 equals xyz, and then I can just return, is smiddle 3 equal to xyz? So for odd solution, I'll call this odd solution, return the value of smiddle 3 double equals xyz. And let's put that odd solution after I do that console.log. Now, is this making sense to you?
Mr. Manning?
Yep.
So I did try that. I had spaces. My string was different that I was sending it, and I found out that plus, I think somewhere you said you add 3 to the end of the index. Like you return the console log of the middle of the string -1, and then comma the middle of the string +3.
Yeah.
It's like your end. Well, I just found out that it counts a space. So I don't know if you would want to count that for, say, +2 instead.
Say that again?
It's 0 indexed.
Yeah.
And it counts spaces as characters. So I don't know if that would mess
Oh,
up.
so you're saying with spaces removed, check it with spaces removed?
So right now I have a string that all it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Yeah.
Now if I put my ending index as middle index +3, it would return 4, 5, 6, and 7. But if I say middle index +2 as the ending index,
It goes beyond the end.
it does 4, 5, and 6, and we just want 3 characters anyway.
Yeah.
So it's just 0 index.
Yeah, it's 0 index, and that's how I get this to work. I don't do a +1 here for the middle. But this is only going to work on odd numbers. So I'm working with odd numbers initially. So if I have an odd number of characters, this should work for any odd number of characters. And I did put a console.log. I should get a return true or false in these last 2 logs. Let's see what happens. I get a true on the first one because it had odd number of characters. I get a false even though I should have gotten a true. So the odd solution is working. How do I fix this for the even solution? Let's just, before we end here, let's suggest what our solution would be. I'm going to put in here, not working for even numbers. Well, how about this? Even solution, in the descriptive language, check SMIDL 3 and SMIDL plus 1 as center of possible XYZ. That's my suggested solution, because I see in this particular one, if AXYBB equals, the middle is 3, it thinks Z is the middle character, and it checks around Z, and I get YZB. So that was SMIDL, and I should check to the not only SMIDL and SMIDL minus 1 as the center, not plus 1. I see there that with this even number, YZB, I should check for it if it's equal to XYZ. I should also check to see if X here, starting at position 2 of a string of length 6, gives me an XYZ. So I have to check left and right of center. And so I think I would just need to say, if it happens to be odd, check to see if middle minus 1, well, first of all, see if it's an odd number of or an even number of characters. If it is, check to see if middle minus 1 is even. And I would say, I have a result of true here. I could return, but only if it's odd. So I need to split my check. If it's an odd solution, or if it's an odd number of characters, do this. If it's an even number of characters, check 2 places, if it's left or right of center. Because in an even number of characters, there is no middle letter. There's left and right, center-ish. I'll let you see if you can give the solution to that. This sounds like a great little solution to a little problem to put on a final. So see if you can solve that. We'll check that next time. And you know what? I'm going to make this a little exercise. Give me the answer, and I'll do a few more coding bat problems to test your logic skills. I'm thinking these coding bat problems are a great place to do a little coding practice. I'll pick another couple and have some exercises for you. So I want to get you practicing your logic skills now with not a ton more exposure to new things in the language, solving simple to harder problems in the language now. And then I'm going to be coming up with a final project as we come to the end here, and maybe you can give a proposal, something, maybe perhaps something you might like to do as a final project. We haven't done graphics yet. That might be a fun thing to incorporate in your final project, a little animation.
Setting up a local web server to start making games.
Nate. All right, have a great day.
Still cool though. You would only be able to play if you're connected to the lab network though, right?
Yeah, well, I'd
Yeah.
have to have this VMware.
What you did, like walking us
But it's a
through
testing zone.
the
Then I can. What's
Do
it
it at
called?
home. You have a
blockchain helped a
200
lot.
watt AC
So
circuit
if
in your house.
I were
No,
to
what I do
revisit
is then I
that
make
and turn
this,
something in, would I
and then I
Yeah.
possibly get points for it?
publish
Yep.
it